2011 has been an historical storm season. It has set not just one, but two records, both of which tragically are reflected in numbers of fatalities. On April 27th and 28th, a massive outbreak in the south and southeast killed over 340 people, surpassing the death toll of the infamous 1974 super outbreak. A few weeks later, in another outbreak of violent tornadoes farther west in Tornado Alley proper, a massive EF5 wedge leveled Joplin, Missouri, killing over 140 people and becoming the first single tornado since the Flint, Michigan tornado of 1953 to take over 100 lives in the United States. Storm chasers this spring witnessed the extremes of the best and worst that our passion for convective beauty and violence has to offer. The storms have been amazing. They have also been horrifying. Regretfully, my own chases this year have been few and fruitless, but my friend and chase partner of 15 years, Bill Oosterbaan, has had a spectacular season. The highlights include a large tornado in Valonia, Arkansas that few other chasers got to see, and two EF5 tornadoes, one in Alabama and one in Oklahoma. Bill, I followed your progress on radar during the Valonia, Arkansas tornado. You made some absolutely wonderful choices, some great strategic choices. Could you talk about that tornado?
Sure. Actually, I got caught a little far west. I actually watched a series of storms go up. One ended up being this storm that produced this tornado. Probably about 70 miles west of Little Rock, Arkansas. As they progressed to the east, they became more violent. And just north of, northeast or west of Little Rock became tornadic. There were a series, 2 or 3 different cells in this line. This became obviously the biggest and largest. Produced a large wedge. When I realized I was a little far west, I had time to get back on the interstate. Traveled through and up through Little Rock, Arkansas, up and gotten just north of town there, where I was right along the interstate where I shot my film that's the local TV station used to see the tornado. But it was a large wedge tornado at this time that was across the interstate in front of me. I managed to get again a little farther east of it. I shot it just to my west. Getting dark, so it was hard to see, and it's rain-wrapped wedge as well. Yeah. But you could see some power flashes, which I caught on video. So shortly afterwards, I managed to get up on a hill and watch it go through Valonia. And
did you see it actually go through Valonia?
I saw it coming just out of Valonia.
Okay.
I had to. There was a big hill. You know, they were pretty big.
Yeah.
I actually had to get around this large hill. So I took the road just to the south of the town. The town was on the other side of the hill, north of it. And when I came around the north or the east side of it, as I popped out, it was just coming out of the city. So it already killed its
Yeah, it looked to me when I followed you on the radar, and I found myself thinking, you know, what the heck is Bill doing? You know, I mean, it looked like apparently you had some pretty crazy road choices out there.
Exactly. Yeah, there were not too many straight roads. It was fairly wooded, so that was another dangerous thing. It kind of kept coming in and out. That's why I hung around the interstate to start, because I actually had a fairly good view of the storm as it came in over the you know, from the west to the east. Came up over the hills there, and I got a good shot of it. So it was a long chase day. I had left Illinois. I slept in Illinois the night before. Drove almost to Texas, watched the storms go up, then came all the way back to Little Rock. And then I actually followed it. National Weather Service asked me to stay on the storm. They called me and asked me to stay on that storm even at night, so I actually followed
it. Oh, they did?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I actually followed it all the way up to northeast Arkansas, where I stayed overnight that night. Got dark, stayed tornadic. Just north of the interstate. I couldn't see it after it got dark. But I did stay on it. I did film some stuff at night. Did
any of that come out?
No, it was dark, and the storm was probably 3-4 miles north of the interstate, so it was difficult to see. even during daylight. It would have been being a fairly HP storm, high precipitation storm, to see the tornado anyway, especially from the vantage point I had. So I was more south of the storm as opposed to east of the storm. So, but the National Weather Service asked me to stay on it, so I did. And I followed it all the way up to the northeast corner of Arkansas where it dissipated. So,
yeah, you had a vantage point on that storm that not many chasers had. I mean, you were right there. You were in the just very, very close to the couplet.
I got real close a couple times because of the road options. Excuse me. I saw, the large wedge after the interstate as well. It was pretty much on my tail chasing me, and it was moving about 45 knots. So I would stop, try to turn around. And I'd turn around and try to film some of it. I did catch all those power flashes, which was up on YouTube, and I managed to catch that stuff. But it was more of and I got right in the coupling. I mean, I got right in there. A couple of storm chase friends called me to make sure I was all right, because I was the only one at that time on the storm. The young fellow who had filmed just north of me, he got some pretty good shots of it too, but after it went across the interstate, he didn't follow it anymore. So I managed to get some stuff after that as well.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, a couple of days later, then that weather system that produced the Valonia tornado went on to, it intensified, and on April 27th, I believe it was, 27th,
Yes.
Was the disaster out there in Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham. I don't know how many other large towns got hit by violent, large tornadoes. These tornadoes were in a league of their own, with these, there's lots of video out there of this thing hitting Tuscaloosa with these hydro-like secondary vortices spiraling around it, and I'm sure that the other tornadoes that day seemed to be the same thing, kind of a theme. And you were out there around the Huntsville area. You saw how many tornadoes that day now?
I saw 7 tornadoes that day. 1 EF5, 3 EF4s, and the others, I'd be honest with you, I haven't heard the ranking, but they were big tornadoes.
Okay.
Saw the first one, the large one that crossed the interstate, did the EF5 damage going to Huntsville. Unfortunately, I was there when it actually went in. My video camera at the time didn't do a real good job, but I witnessed roofs flying off and knew that there were going to be people dying.
What were your feelings at that time?
You go from excitement to a sense of helplessness.
Yeah.
Because I knew there were people dying. I mean, there was no doubt. It is the most violent tornado I have ever seen. And the thing was moving at 65 knots. So I was having a hard time keeping up with it, because by that time it was starting to go in the middle of town. So I was going a little faster than I should have in the city streets, but I had to stay up with it, and I stayed with it probably 3 miles into town, and then it got way into town, and I couldn't go any farther, because I'd get in the way of first responders.
Sure, right.
I actually saw them staged. That town was very prepared as you could get. There were actually on every other corner as I was heading east was at least 1 to 2 police cars, a couple first response units, and then ambulances besides that. So, and as I passed them, because I was staying with the tornado, they were actually, I could see in my rearview mirror that they were shooting in behind me, heading into the path of the tornado. So, I mean, the National Weather Service, a lot of people complain about them, but they just nailed this one so well. And that morning I had meetings in Nashville. And even in Nashville, that morning I was just driving up from Texas, and in Nashville I had a business lunch. On the radio, they were just screaming all morning. If you know of anybody in this, south of Nashville, and an elderly person or people that aren't, they don't have television or whatever, it is your responsibility. They didn't say, please go. They said it is your responsibility to make sure these people are aware of these weather conditions. It was, kids were out of school that day. They actually shut the schools down. So, kudos to the National Weather Service, because they really nailed it. And in that hatched areas which included, Tuscaloosa and Birmingham and Huntsville, where they had it hatched up at 45 percent, which I've seen maybe twice in my life. They nailed it, and that's right where all the storms formed. That's where all the damage was. So, you know, I mean, it could have been as big and as violent as these tornadoes were, and as fast as these tornadoes were moving. It's amazing. I know it sounds funny when I say that, but it's amazing that only 340 people were killed because these storms they're the most violent. The most violent thing I have ever seen, and I've seen, lots of tornadoes in my life. This was different. That EF5 was a different animal. It was even different from the EF5 I saw in Oklahoma. It was not a big wide wedge like you would think. It was more of a stovepipe, but multi-vortexes wrapping tightly around this stovepipe, and there were multiple ones, and you could just tell, and it felt different.
Wow.
If the atmosphere felt different, the environment felt different, and as I saw it come across the freeway and throw trucks and into town, you could just see that it wasn't going to stop, it wasn't slowing down, it was going to be a killer.
Yeah.
And it was, unfortunately, it wasn't filmed as much as the Tuscaloosa tornado. I do have some very poor video of it, but it was the strongest tornado of the day, for sure.